You are invited to go beyond science fiction. Discover the truth about the most secretive and amazing research project in recorded history that started with the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 when invisibility studies were conducted aboard the USS Eldridge that resulted in full-scale teleportation of the ship and crew. 40 years of massive research ensued, culminating in bizarre experiments at Montauk Point, New York, that actually tapped the powers of creation and manipulated time itself. These experiments have since been called the Montauk Project. This research began with a human factor study of the sailors from the USS Eldridge who suffered mental disorientation and/or physical damage as a result of being exposed to diverse rotating electromagnetic fields that were used in the experiments. Sailors were taken to Camp Upton on Long Island, which had served as a convalescent hospital during World War I and was refurbished for their stay. After World War II, Camp Upton became Brookhaven National Laboratory, and the human factor study was continued, utilizing the captured German documents from Nazi experiments on humans, including the research of Dr. Joseph Mengele and his work on the psychic capabilities of twins. Also included was the work of Dr. Wilhelm Reich and his orgone therapy, which probes deeply into the psychosexual nature of individuals. All of this was correlated with microwave radio research at Brookhaven Labs and was directed by John von Neumann, recognized as the father of the modern computer, one of his first imperatives being to correlate the computer with the mind of man. This period gave rise to many secret programs such as Project Bluebird, Operation Artichoke, and MK Ultra. The research at Brookhaven focused on interfacing the human mind with radio waves and computers so that a thought of an individual could be received by a radio receiver, transmitted into a digital format that could be processed by a computer, and then amplified and transmitted so as to influence human moods and emotions. This is known as PSYOPs, for psychological operations, and is a tool that is used in all forms of warfare. We know this from the research of scientist Preston Nichols, who worked on the project when it was moved out to Camp Hero at Montauk Point in 1972. Montauk was ideal because Camp Hero featured a huge radar tower that emitted a frequency of 435 megahertz, which is recognized as the window frequency to the human consciousness. The Montauk transmitter was very powerful and capable of significantly amplifying whatever signal the operators chose to transmit. This resulted in altering the moods of the population as well as animals. The experiments were sometimes vicious and cruel, but their purpose was to effectively probe into the paranormal capabilities of the human mind and to use them for purposes of control and domination. Besides manipulating the moods of living organisms and people, they eventually discovered the capability of an individual to influence the structure and location of matter, all of which led to the influencing of time. With the use of a delta T antenna, where delta means change and T means time, fuzzy boundary layers of consciousness manifested, which were functional time portals or tunnels. The Montauk Project was, quite literally, mind control taken to its furthest reaches, and this included the boundaries of time and the exploration thereof. Time capabilities were generated, maintained, and monitored primarily through the personage of Duncan Cameron, the lead psychic operator who had been trained since his early years to fit into such a project. The general technical approach to how time was manipulated, including diagrams and descriptions of equipment, was encapsulated in book form in 1992 in the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, which also contains subjective experiential accounts of traveling into time. While the Montauk Project was ruthlessly pioneering unprecedented technology and regions of consciousness, power, and control, it was also moving into the realm of power that the collective human consciousness generally identifies with God. According to multiple but somewhat varied accounts, the time experiments came to a screeching halt on August 12, 1983, when a phantom-like beast appeared to crash the project. The beast allegedly came out of Duncan's mind and was amplified through the transmitter to sever the power supply supporting the time portals and suspend further activity. This time period also featured a major blackout in New York City due to an excessive drain on the power grid. It must be recognized that while the more exotic aspects of the Montauk Project are dependent upon various subjective accounts of people who were subjected to a traumatic mental environment, the backbone of the Montauk Project story and its associated tentacles have not only stood the test of time, hard science can now confirm the technical feasibility of such an endeavor. Nobody knows this more than myself, as I have been working for a quarter of a century to verify what I could and to seek new clues and further information with regard to the phenomena encountered. My name is Peter Moon, and I helped Preston Nichols write the Montauk Project and also published it through my company, Sky Books. My initial investigation branched out primarily in two directions. First was to pursue what I could by an ordinary journalistic approach, and this resulted in a quarterly newsletter, the Montauk Pulse, which has remained in print ever since 1993. As the primary data trail of the Montauk Project had been deliberately obfuscated, the second approach was to pursue an avenue of investigation that centered around the primary characters involved in the story and their connections to the occult. The immediate result of this was a sequel entitled Montauk Revisited: Adventures in Synchronicity. What you have learned here is really only just the tip of an iceberg. In a sense, the legend and story of the Montauk Project will never end, because it is really about the end of time as we know it. You can find out about our books, such as the Montauk Project: Experiments in Time, or subscribe to the Montauk Pulse newsletter at skybooksusa.com. You can also find out more information on these topics at digitalmontauk.com. Thank you for listening.